Welcome to Empowered. I'm Elizabeth Naumovski. What exactly is a marriage contract? Simply put, it's a way to protect your assets. I believe it's an important step as it safeguards what you've built and saved before moving in with your or marrying your partner. Some may view it as a sign of negativity in the relationship, but I actually look at it differently. A marriage contract offers valuable insights into the person you're entering a relationship with, fostering transparency and understanding. Marriage contracts aren't just for some people, they're for everyone. Today, I'm joined by Jane Cvijan, who's senior counsel at M&Co Law, and she's here to tell us why. Jane, welcome to Empowered.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, so let's begin. What is a marriage contract? Because I have to say, I was talking to a bunch of young people and they have this negativity came up and they said, you're tainting the relationship, before it ends up growing. So please explain what a marriage contract is.
For sure. Well, firstly, there are a few different contracts under the concept of a marriage contract. We have a prenuptial agreement, which is what most of us know about, a postnuptial agreement, or a cohabitation agreement, which is meant for couples who are not married but are common law spouses.
Okay, so how do you go about getting a marriage contract? And how do you bring it up to your partner?
For sure. Well, firstly, you can bring it up in a way that's positive. It does not have to be a negative conversation. It can absolutely be one that is intended to fortify your relationship and make it stronger. Because right at the outset, you're going to talk about the thing that most couples fight about, which is money. And the best way to do your research in terms of getting a marriage contract, go online and find a lawyer and interview that lawyer and make sure that their philosophy aligns with what you're looking to accomplish with your agreement.
So let's just step back a moment. You did talk about the three different contracts. There's the prenup, the marriage contract, and then the cohabitation agreement. Could you explain exactly which one, what each one is?
For sure. The prenuptial agreement is what you would want to obtain before you get married. A postnuptial agreement is you've already been married, you are married, and now you want to get your marriage contract in place for whatever reason you didn't do it before you got married. And then a cohabitation agreement is for common law partners. So common law partners are not married, but they have been living together for more than 3 years, or they're living together and they have a child, and they too need to protect their rights under the law, even though it is a little bit different for common law partners than it is for married people.
So you said 3 years. I was under the impression, maybe this is old news, that it was 2 years. Is there a change?
It's 3 years. I think it's been 3 years for a long time. It can be less than 3 years, but only if you have a child, whether that is a biological child or an adopted child.
Good. Well, that's good to know because a lot of people think the latter. So why would I want an agreement like this?
You want an agreement like this, frankly, to protect yourself, and everybody should want to protect themselves from what happens if you do separate. Because if you do separate, and hopefully that does not happen, everybody wants to live happily ever after. I certainly wanted to live happily ever after, did not. But if you wind up separating, it is very costly. And when I say costly, I do not just mean money, though it is extremely expensive, but it's also costly in respect of your time and your emotional health.
So why don't you just go through some of the steps then when there is a breakdown without a prenup? Because a lot of people just think, you know what, I'm not giving him this because this is mine and I worked hard for it. But without a prenup, it doesn't really matter. You have to share it all, don't you?
You do, it's an automatic obligation to divide all of your assets and debts equally. You have to remember that it's also debts. So if you're married to somebody who has a lot of debts, you're also taking that on just as you're taking on the assets. And then you have to deal with support obligations, whether you're the one who's pursuing support or you're the one who's going to be paying it. These are all things that you're going to have to deal with at a time where you are highly emotional and you're potentially going to be having people in your ears, lawyers. I don't want to badmouth fellow lawyers, but certainly you can have people in your ear who are going to be promoting that emotion and are going to be encouraging you to continue to fight and drag it on. And you potentially are not going to be any further ahead at the end of it than you were at the start. And you could have avoided it all with an agreement.
Okay, so please don't go away. We'll be right back to talk more about marriage contracts and cohabitation agreements. Welcome back to Empowered. I'm Elizabeth Naumovski, and today's topic marriage contracts are for everyone. Jane, let's talk about prenups. Does a prenuptial only protect the person with money?
Absolutely not. It's actually a great way to go into your marriage and know bluntly where the bodies are buried. I always think of my mother. It's true. I think of my mother who married my father 60 plus years ago, and it was a traditional marriage. My father is the one who has all the money, who earned all the money, and my mother did not, and she was not particularly educated. But I tell you, if that woman knew about a prenup way back when, she would have made my father account for every single dime and made sure that if he dared left her, that she would be leaving that marriage secure financially and to make sure that she can take care of her 2 daughters. So, it is not just for everybody, it is to make sure that when something happens, and hopefully it doesn't happen, that you are set up so that you are in a secure position at the end of the day, and you're simply pre-negotiating those terms.
I think it's important. I love the fact that you said pre-negotiating because I was just about to ask, how does a prenuptial protect me? But you had just said it's a pre-negotiation.
Absolutely, and it's a pre-negotiation at a time where everybody is very happy, everybody is in love, everybody wants to make sure that you are taken care of and that it is fantastic, and so that is an great time to get in there and negotiate those terms that are going to be fair. Now, it is important to partner with the right lawyers when you're drafting your prenups because, again, not all lawyers are made the same, and some really like to fight, and we have witnessed situations where the wrong people have wound up on the file and couples have broken up because it's become so acrimonious, but it does not have to be that way. I have spoken to clients who have come to us and retained us, and one of the first things that they say is, "Oh my goodness, I didn't expect it to be like this. You're so friendly and this process is so easy and you're not making it difficult." And frankly, with the right lawyer behind you, you can even have help with respect to broaching these topics and going to your partner and having the discussions. And some clients need that. I've written scripts for some clients. Like, "Hi, honey, I would like to talk to you about this agreement that is intended to protect both of us." But really and truly, it is meant to protect both of you because you're going to know exactly what you're going into the marriage with. And you're going to know exactly what the terms are if you're walking out. And if a prenup has been done properly, as it should be, it has to be fair to both parties.
And I agree with you. I'm a firm believer of prenups. I think they're very, very important because, as you said, two people come together, they're very, very happy, everything is wonderful until it's not. And then this actually, you don't have to fight. It actually tells you what your next steps are. And, you don't have to worry about spending thousands upon thousands of dollars on lawyers because most of it is already there. You've already, prenupped it. But I want to go
Yes.
forward and talk about what happens if I actually divorce without a prenup.
You are going to be in a potential mess. Again, depending on how you're divorcing, what is at stake. We have seen couples who are divorcing and frankly can't afford to divorce. And there is no money and they are still fighting and now they are paying lawyers' bills. Whether you have a little bit of money or a lot of money, it can be really, really nasty. Again, because emotions are running high, and depending on who you wind up partnering with, those feelings of anger and vengefulness can continue to be promoted. And if that happens, you are potentially looking at giving up years of your life. I'm not talking about 6 months. With a prenup, you could be in and out 3 to 6 months. I just did one yesterday with a prenup. They were in and out within 3 to 6 months. Without one, you are looking potentially at 2 to 4 years of your life where you are paying a lawyer for 2 to 4 years to be fighting with your ex over money to maybe go to a trial. And now you're at a trial and you've probably paid $100,000 for the trial, in addition to probably 50 or $100,000 to get to your trial. And maybe there's no money at the end of it because it's all gone to the lawyers. Or maybe what you are fighting for at the end is very little compared to what you started off with.
I know of so many. I've talked to so many friends, and they've talked about them and their friends or whatever. The problem is, without a prenup, the emotions start taking over, and stubbornness takes over as well. And one party doesn't want the other party to go ahead with their life, and it becomes very, very difficult. And as you said, it costs a lot of money. So please don't go away. We'll be right back with more talk about prenups and cohabitation agreements. Welcome back to Empowered. I'm Elizabeth Naumovski, and today's topic is marriage contracts are for everyone. Jane, before we went to break, you'd mentioned something that kind of stuck with me, and I want to talk about it. You said that some people can't afford to divorce, and I've heard stories where couples are separated, don't want a divorce because, quite frankly, once they divorce, they won't be able to have the lifestyle that they've become accustomed to. So, please tell us some stories and let's talk about when where couples can't afford to divorce.
Yeah, there's two scenarios where couples can't afford to divorce. The first one is, frankly, there's insufficient assets. People aren't making enough money really to go ahead and hire a lawyer. Our firm has actually worked very hard at creating a secondary system that people can access to create separation agreements, a bit of a DIY kit for them called the Simple Separation. So we're trying to fill that space for people who can't afford lawyers. On the flip side, you have couples that maybe on paper appear to have a lot of money and a certain type of lifestyle, but let's say there's a lot of kids involved. I have several cases right now where you look at the numbers and these people are worth tens of millions of dollars, but they have many, many children and they are in a very expensive home. And now, how are both of these people going to separate? Can somebody afford to buy the other one out of the house? Are they going to agree to let that happen? These are all things that are now up for debate because they haven't talked about it. Now, with the prenuptial agreement, that all could have been mapped out already, and there would not be any question marks about that, and they would have been set to know what the exit strategy is. And the great thing that our firm does in particular is we like to keep our agreements up to date. So if there are a lot of changes that are going on in our clients' lives, we like to step in and make sure that everything is up to date so that it's accounted for as they go along with their lovely lives together and ideally never have to come back to us with a separation.
So, you're talking about getting involved. How involved are you when you are preparing a marriage contract?
Well, we're involved in the sense that we are there to help them identify what their goals are. We're there to do their financial disclosure. We're there to make sure that their interests are protected, but again, protected in a fair way, because we want to make sure that our contracts are drafted in a way that our clients can rely on them. We're available to negotiate the terms for our clients as well. We very much tailor our services to make sure that it's meeting the client's needs and goals as opposed to what we're telling them to do. And I think part of that is because, well, Anna Marie Messon, who's a longstanding friend of mine and actually started this firm, she's one of my best friends for more than 20 years. And while her and I were not originally family lawyers, we came out of the Bay Street culture. And along the way, both of us needed family lawyers. And when we needed family lawyers and identified the way it was operating, she smartly realized that there was a space that needed to be filled, and that space really needed to focus on what the clients wanted and executing what our clients want, whether that is a prenuptial agreement or a separation, and doing it in a way that makes sense for the client and not the lawyer.
So, I'm sure a lot of people struggle with, talking to their partners about this. A lot of people struggle talking to their partners about finances. How should someone broach a marriage contract to their partner?
I think the best way to broach a marriage contract is I want to protect both of us. I don't want us to ever separate. I want us to live a happy life and be together forever and die on the same bed like the Notebook couple. And please, Ryan Gosling, if you're ever available, give me a call. But other than that, Your goal is really to approach it as this is for both of our benefit. And let's get this nasty discussion that most couples fight about, which really is money. That is usually the number one reason. Frankly, I've had clients come to us saying, well, we're breaking up and it's a money issue. So get that conversation out of the way right at the start. And then it's going to be a lot easier to navigate throughout your marriage. And again, if you approach it as this is for both of us, this isn't for me. This is for us. I want to protect us now, and I want to protect us in the future, and I want to maintain the integrity and love of this relationship no matter what happens.
I think that's important. I think the fact that you're talking about love and integrity and protecting the relationship, I mean, this is clearly is not a taboo. You and I are on the same page here. I firmly believe in this. You firmly believe in it as well. When we come back from our commercial break, I want to do a flip question and ask you about, how you should react when your partner actually asks you for a prenup. So please don't go away. We'll be right back with more marriage contracts. Welcome back to Empowered. I'm Elizabeth Naumovski. Today's topic is marriage contracts are for everyone. And I'm joined by Jane Cvijan, who is senior counsel at M&Co Law. Jane, let's flip the tables here. How do I respond if my partner asks me for a prenup? Because I know the first thing people will think of is being offended and angry, and they shouldn't be.
It should not be. I say your response should be, yes, great. I love that idea. Let's sit down and talk about what our mutual goals are. What do we both want to achieve? What is important to us? How do we see this relationship developing? Are these not all great conversations to have going into a marriage? You're creating solid ground for yourself with a prenup and a marriage contract. You are not actually hurting your relationship. I think you're fortifying it.
I agree. So let's go forward. What questions should I negotiate with while negotiating a prenup?
Well, I think a lot of it comes down to how do you two foresee your future going? Is this a very young couple that is planning on starting a family? Because that's going to impact how they're going to negotiate versus maybe this is a second, a third, a fourth marriage. No judgments over here. But that is also going to be a little bit different in terms of how you're going to identify your financial goals, your support goals, because maybe there are other children from prior relationships or other support obligations. These are all things that are going to have to be navigated so that the couple can come up with what fair and equitable terms are in their particular circumstance.
Okay, so now I've signed my marriage. I've signed my prenup. I'm ready to go. Now what?
Well, the first thing that you want to do is talk to an estate lawyer because you need to update your will. The worst thing you can have happen, because estates law is the other area where people really, really like to fight and it gets highly emotional, is if you have two competing contracts. Maybe your marriage contract says one thing and then the will says something else. And now you could have families fighting and partners fighting, and it can be a big old mess. So just make sure that you have a will that is always updated with your marriage contract.
Okay, so what do I need to think about after signing the contract then? Like what's the next step? I've talked to the lawyers. I've got everything happening. Now what?
Ideally, you don't have to think about it again because you're living happily ever after and you've just tucked it away. But again, one of the things that our firm likes to do, and we're a little bit different in this, is we do tell our clients be mindful of significant events in your life and then maybe consider whether your contract has to be updated. For example, oh, well, we've been living in Ontario for the last 5 years, but now I'm taking a job in Dubai and we're going to be living in Dubai for the next 10 years. What happens if we separate in Dubai? How is that going to impact things? Or I was a resident when we started dating, but now I'm a full-fledged doctor and I've started a professional corporation. What does that mean? Has this changed the terms of our agreement or at all? And maybe the answer is no, but maybe the answer is yes. And if it's yes, then you're going to need to amend your agreement.
So who's the best person to consult with if I need information or help with a marriage contract?
A good lawyer. A good lawyer, obviously, not all professionals are made the same, but as a starting point, maybe talk to a friend who has a contract. Maybe you have I mean, my mother is notorious for spelling me to every single one of her friends for every single legal problem she potentially has or they potentially have here and elsewhere. But maybe that's just a starting point. And if nothing else, Google's your best friend. Just do some searching and figure out what it is. There's a lot of also DIY kits out there, and for some people, that could be more than sufficient, especially if you don't have an overly complicated financial structure.
Okay, Jim, we have about 15 seconds left. What words of wisdom do you have to a couple who are stubborn and they can't move forward to go through with this divorce?
To go through with the divorce, oh my goodness. I think, again, sit down with a mediator, sit down with a lawyer, sit down with each other and figure out if it really makes sense to continue to just be dragging one another as opposed to moving on and being happy.
Thank you so much, Jane. This was great today.
Thank you.
Ladies, Jane has a message for you. She says, he may have hollered he wants a prenup, but so do you. I encourage you to echo back, I want a prenup, and then find out what your financial picture is with your partner. Protect yourself in the event your relationship does not work out by asking the right questions at the start and choosing the right path for you when drafting your contract. I'm Elizabeth Naumovski, and I'm here to empower you and make frugality fashionable. Bye for now.